Hello, and welcome to another season of the Storied Arcs podcast. I'm your co-host, Mike.
And I'm your co-host, Alex.
And today we are getting ready to dive into the world of Bylines and Blood. And you may not be familiar with this title, these authors, or even this publisher. So we're going to talk about all of that today in a spoiler-free way. Hopefully get you excited for the book. Go pick it up in single issue. I think a lot of shops will still have a few issues around. You may have to do the multi-shop hunt.
They might have it. I mean, you might be able to find it in a secondhand shop or something like that. But you can definitely have the trade somewhere. The trade will be out there.
Trade is brand spanking new. Yeah, it's it looks nice. It's certainly at libraries. It's on Hoopla.
Yeah, you can get it digitally as well. Absolutely.
So yeah, pick it up. But before we get into the book itself next week and our creator interview the week after, we're going to start with I'm going to start with where I started, which is I found this book. I pulled the first issue because I read the solicit back in 2021.
January. The first issue came out January 2022. So you would have read the solicit and the 21.
Yeah, like October, November, somewhere in there. And here was the pitch: the future. The very concept of truth has died. Politicians invent their own facts, and independent newspapers no longer exist. In this world, private detectives serve as Ronin, searching out the hard truths that people are desperate to keep hidden. The best of these is Satya, known as Lady Dick, a former journalist turned gumshoe who runs every lead to the ground. But Satya has just received her hardest case yet. Her old editor has been murdered. Someone wanted him silenced, and the trail points toward the highest bastions of power. To find justice for her friend, she'll have to put everything and everyone she knows at risk. And then it kind of goes into the publisher speak of a prophetic neo-noir thriller with unexpected twists at every turn. And then it, introduces everyone that we're going to talk about. So
you get a lot in that. There's a lot in that pitch.
Right. Well, and it was like kind of checking all the boxes for me.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, whoa, I do kind of love a detective thing. I love a mystery thing. I love the gritty journalist thing. I love the neo-noir. I love a thriller. So anyway, I was like, hats off to whoever the editor was for this book, which I think kind of naturally leads us into the discussion of the publisher.
Yeah.
Because publishers, work with, kind of the overarching editor for the series, and they tend to approve. By the way, let me just say that I just read the first issue of Man's Best this week by Pornsak Bishashot.
Mm-hmm.
And he has a little letter in the back where he sells you on buying the rest of the issues and what the series is about. You can tell he used to be an editor. Like his elevator pitch is airtight. It was like, this is Homeward Bound meets something. And I was like, oh my gosh, he's so good at that. So anyway, that's the strength of a good editor will identify the audience and speak their language. And that's what whoever did this at Aftershock did.
Yeah, I think when we get into it next week, talking about the book, one thing about it is how many genres it touches on and kind of crosses into. And in that description right there, directly from the publisher, they sell you hard on all of them. They let you know up front there's going to be a lot of different things here. I didn't realize that solicitation kind of gave you that much. But that's definitely good stuff. Had I read that, probably would have been into it. And it was interesting. I came to this book because you had recommended, you had read it. I had not. And it was, I don't say a miss on me. It probably was because I had read a number of other books from Aftershock. And I guess this is what we'll go into a little bit about their history as a publisher and kind of where they stand now, because it's in some iffy waters, to say the least, as we're recording this episode. But Aftershock was founded back in 2015. So it's not a super old publisher. It's relatively new. Their tagline was "Read dangerously." I got to say, they had a number of books in that time, that I really, really enjoyed. Some really, really good stuff. If you're a horror fan, which I know Mike and I generally don't identify as horror fans in comics, but if you like horror comics, Aftershock had some really, really good stuff. That they've almost kind of ceded that to Boom, mainly because of James Tynion IV and everything that he's navigating in the Slaughterverse and all that. But for a while there, Aftershock had some really, really good horror books, horror aimed books, like not just like horror tinged, like actual horror books. They were really really good there, and they seemed pretty smart in terms of how many books they were publishing, putting out, the creators they were working with, and they seemed points. If you had asked me maybe 4 or 5 years ago, maybe pre-pandemic, when they were in their third or fourth year of existence, I would have said that they were poised to maybe be like the fourth or fifth publisher, like challenging Boom. Marvel, DC, Image, and said Boom right now, I believe, is number 4. I would have told you like 4 or 5 years ago that I thought Aftershock could have been up there because some of the titles were really good creative teams. A couple I want to shout out here to give people a sense of the kind of books they published. A book I've mentioned a ton here before, multiple times, called Animosity by Marguerite Bennett and Raphael Del Torre. It's a book about every animal on the planet at the same moment instantly gains full human intelligence and sentience, so they can speak, think, and reason just like humans. Every single animal on the planet. And then the world goes awry because they're not real happy with humanity, and they basically take over the world. But that's also like it's a kind of a lone wolf and cub book. It's about a little girl, Maggie, and her dog, her bloodhound Sandor. Her parents have died in all of this, and they're trying to get her to her half brother, I think, going from New York to San Francisco. So you got to cross the country in a world now that's run by sentient animals. But that's a really, really great book, a really fun book. And that was one of the first I read from Aftershock that I even saw their name. I think the first title I did with Aftershock was called Rough Riders, which is by Adam Glass and Patrick Olaf. It's the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, but for late 19th century America.
See, look at this. You could probably be a comic editor.
Yeah, I mean,
I think you know the stuff well enough that you can. Well, and you know enough stuff outside
I'm rehashing
comics.
the stuff from what is said and what the pitches were back then. But Rough Riders are obviously that's the name of Teddy Roosevelt. It stars Teddy Roosevelt. This is pre-president.
You talked about this on another episode.
I think I mentioned this one too. Yeah, this is pre-president Teddy Roosevelt. He assembles a team to fight supernatural forces. This team.
I think this was our first holiday episode where you were like, this is a book I would love to talk about, but I'm not sure there's really anything to talk about other than it's fun. Yeah.
So it's Teddy Roosevelt with Harry Houdini, Annie Oakley, Thomas Edison, Jack Johnson. And so the Rough Riders are this team. It's the Avengers of American history at that time. But it's a really fun book that has fun with history and who these characters are, and they interact with other characters from other people, notable figures of the era as well. So those are just a couple books out there. Scout's Honors, another fun book that I like.
The ones that I had read was A Calculated Man and Maniac of New York. I did not read the follow-up series to Maniac of New York.
Yeah.
And both of those were really just like not the solicits. It was like I walked into a shop and I was like, that cover's kind of cool.
Yeah, there's great art, great covers. Yeah,
I mean they got like good, like they were discovering some talent. They were like a bump up for some indie artists, but they got some good names too.
Absolutely. They have big names. They have good stuff. I remember. So I remember I met Marguerite Bennett, who's a writer who's done a significant amount of DC work, probably most notably in terms of big two work, some Marvel work as well, but mostly DC work. I met her at a show and had my copy of Animosity #1, among other things. And I when I put that book down in front of her, she's looking at what you have and she's signing there for me. And she said, creators aren't supposed to have favorite books, just not how it works. But she pointed down at Animosity and she said, but this one's my favorite,
Yeah.
Because and maybe I don't know what kind of deal Aftershock gave their creators that might be relevant in the future in terms of their current standing, but they were drawing talent and they were putting out some really good and really smart books. So now timeline wise, this is where it coincides with Bylines and Blood. So as I mentioned, Bylines and Blood, that first issue came out in January 2022. So it's 4 issues. So January, February, March, April 2022. Then the trade collection came out in August of 2022. All that's relevant because in middle December 2022, Aftershock filed for bankruptcy. There had been reports that a lot of creators, writers, and artists, a lot of freelancers just hadn't been paid. And that's how the story started leaking, that people hadn't been paid for work from Aftershock. And then once those started coming out, like within a week or so, it was announced that they had filed Chapter 11. And that put a hold on everything. Everything at Aftershock just kind of went into stasis there. And it was all about how are they going to reorganize? Are they going to recover? What happens to the properties? All that stuff still in limbo. But in July of 2023, so like 6-7 months after they filed bankruptcy, they were at San Diego Comic-Con. And I guess they were at a presentation, and the reports were when kind of their head guys got up on stage, it was like deathly quiet in the audience because, people were on edge. Like, what are they going to say? What is it going to be?
Right.
I'm sure there are people in that room maybe, and people at the show who had properties tied up in the bankruptcy filings and all that, who hadn't been paid. But they made an announcement. This is July 2023 that they were planning on working on a comeback, that they were still working on reorganizing and finding an end to a resolution to the situation. But as you record now, it's still in limbo. So who knows what it is and what it means for the properties, the various comics and IP that were published by Aftershock. It's all still in limbo right now as they're working it out, which is, it's so unfortunate for the creators, obviously, because their work is now stuck there. They can't do anything with it. Can't publish more there right now, and you can't take it and potentially publish it somewhere else. It's just stuck in purgatory as the legal as they try to figure out the proceedings for Aftershock's bankruptcy. So if that's the end of Aftershock, if it doesn't ever come back, it's really, really bad, really unfortunate, because for a few short years there, they put out some really, really good books with some really top talent. And like I said, I thought they could have been a standout indie publisher and not just been in that group of everybody else. They could have been up there with a Boom as being like the 4th or 5th.
Yeah, I mean,
publisher.
I think they are the example in my head of like I now feel a little sheepish about like an AWA who I love. I'm like, don't get too committed to anything that they're putting out. It might all just disappear someday.
Yeah,
Mad Cave. It's like when I like a book from these companies, I love it. But now I'm very nervous because I realize how fragile this industry is.
Yeah. And
the creators themselves will be fine. They can move their work, but they may not be able to move their property out of a situation like that. Yeah. So it's like,
they can work elsewhere and do a different book. But yeah. Oh, and we should say right now, we have no idea how or what led to Aftershock situation. It could have been with comics. It could have been massive financial screw ups.
I mean, I suspect it was the pandemic.
It could have been have been a bunch of little things. You make one or two small mistakes, and then because the margins are so small, things just dominate. Like, we have no idea. We have no idea what led to this. So there's no judgment there. Just the fact of the matter is they put out a really good product for a handful of years.
And it's a really hard industry. I mean, it's super really difficult.
Yeah. And this is one of the books. This is one of the books that really, when we're talking about that last year, 2022, the last year Aftershock, Bylines and Blood here comes out. This is one of the last things they put out in full, and it's fantastic. So like they're putting out great work. They're working with great creators. It's just whatever was happening on the back end, on the business end, I guess quite literally wasn't adding up. Weekend that it's so unfortunate. It sucks for the creators, the ones who have um contract terms in limbo right now. It sucks for them. But selfishly as readers, it sucks for us too, because I want to read good books from good creators and smart publishers, and I really thought Aftershock was going down that road. And said maybe they able to recover and get things turned around. That's obviously best case scenario, but we'll have to wait and see. Have to wait and see, because as of the recording of this episode right now, it's still up in the air, and so we're coming up on 16, 18 months since they filed bankruptcy, you know? So who knows if they
Yeah,
ever recover?
yeah. It's not worth speculating because
Yeah. Yeah. We don't know. We don't know.
5 years from now, it still may not be resolved, or maybe be resolved by the time this episode comes out.
Exactly. Yeah. And then who knows? In the next month, who knows? Yeah. There could be some announcement, or there could never be an announcement. But it is what it is with the situation right now. You still have the books that exist, books that are out there that you can go find. You can still read. Their library is still pretty strong. There's some really good stuff there, including Bylines and Blood. You can go out and get there, although I don't know how that works in terms of like what that does for supportive creators. Obviously, if you buy the book directly from the creators, different story. If you can't order this stuff from Aftershock now. So anything you buy, anything you find at the shop, your local shop, a comic shop, bookstore, whatever, is already something that's already been paid for. So the work is still out there. You can still read the book, read the comics, and said there are a lot that are worth your time, I think. So
Yeah, for sure. Shall we move into this creative team,
yeah.
which is an interesting one because this is our first time with co-writers.
That's what I was thinking back. It's the first time we've had co-writers, and I don't think we've even had books that had co-artists, like actual main artists.
No, not main artists, but
Yeah.
there was some heavy rotating by the end of the Unwritten. But
Yeah,
you still called
yeah.
it Peter Gross because he did all the character design.
Yeah,
It was just like
he created it. It was Phil, yeah, that's true.
MK Purser?
MK Parker. Yeah,
Parker.
yeah.
Parker was doing whole trades of issues, but I don't think he was designing original characters.
No, and I think maybe the layouts were done by Peter Gross and then finishes or something like that. But you're right. In terms of creators, people responsible for the world itself. First time we've had any kind of co-creatives on the top on any of the top lines. So yeah, this book co-written by Aneke Schultz and Van Jensen, which is it's an interesting thing when you work on when you're working on co-authorship, in terms of what that relationship is like. How does it work together? Something I'm interested. We'll have I think we can say we have a chat coming up after our discussion with Aneke Schultz.
Since we've already recorded it, yes.
Yeah, we can only say that there.
We're I think often gun shy about
Yeah.
announcing things before they happen, but it's like, in this one, I am beyond certain we will have the episode because I already have it on my computer.
Well, so hopefully it doesn't crash now between now and then. And
well, now you say that, yeah.
It's like break a leg. You have to say it, so it doesn't happen. It's like a reverse jinx action there. But it interesting to talk to her about what that was like working with Van, working with a secondary writer there, and how the kind of flow of ideas and writing scripts and things worked. That's a real fascinating part of the conversation. But I guess we'll start with Aneke. We'll start with her and her origin. I think you have that pulled up there, right?
I mean, yeah, it's not in a condensed fashion.
Yeah.
Basically, we were going to ask her about her background, and I thought this was hilarious. So I was offered to send creators like, here's a list of questions we want to talk about, but if anything's off limits, by all means. And she was like, well, it's not really off limits, it's just not interesting.
Yeah.
She's like, it's on the internet. I've said it on a bunch of podcasts. It's on Wikipedia. Just go look at that. So to some extent, I want to say that, except to say that she's not merely a writer. She's a writer, she's a letterer, she's an editor.
Mm-hmm.
First woman to write a Spawn comic, which I can say confidently now, with Rat City on my desk.
Mm-hmm.
She's worked on Marvel and DC, everywhere in the industry, starting around 2010, 2011.
Yeah,
Um,
mostly it was she started in smaller publishers. A lot of Dynamite, Vice Press, things like that. Stuff that may be harder to find before moving into more. I was gonna say for higher work, but it's really for higher work at Marvel, which is where you're gonna find her now, writing a lot of stuff in the past 3 or 4 years, moving into more of the for hire work being someone in the stable of writers that Marvel turns to. Um, but yeah, I would say it's been about bordering on 15 years now. I think as her working as a creative in comics, somewhere around there.
totally. Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I think that's about right.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
There's some
so,
good. Sorry, go ahead.
oh no, I was just gonna say, uh, a kind of a overwhelming size resume for like a 10, 15 year career. Um,
Yeah,
just
it's real. I don't say scattershot because there's so many smaller publishers. Like she'll work on something for this
well,
and
and
work on something
because
for
she's
that.
not
Yeah,
just a writer.
yeah,
When
yeah,
you're a
yeah,
letterer, my
yeah,
goodness, your resume can swell very quickly,
yeah, yeah,
in
yeah.
terms of the number of things that you've pitched in on, uh, and leading workshops and things like that. So it's like, I think it's basically impossible to measure her impact on the comic community because you don't know through all of her collaborations, um, and different workshops and things like that, all of her networking, the ripple effect of Erica Schultz's influence in comics, I think is only beginning to blossom. I think
Well,
she's going to be one of those names
because
that
she's
even
focusing
10
more as a
years from
writer.
now.
It seems clear she's moving into a phase where she is mostly a writer.
Yes,
And if she's lettering, it's probably because she's lettering a creator-owned book that she wrote. Like I don't think she's doing a lot of for hire lettering anymore. Maybe I'm wrong. Look, when I look over her bibliography, the stuff that she's worked on last handful of years, it has been the majority of it. The high profile stuff has been as a writer. So it seems like she's moving into a more of a category like that. But yeah, when you're working as a letterer or an editor at a smaller press kind of thing, I think her time now being one of Marvel's moving into being one of Marvel's rotation of writers, may not allow for her to be an editor on the side or take on lettering jobs as much. So, but yeah, it's still, it's one of the multiple clubs that's in her bag. But it feels like she's a name you're going to see as a writer specifically first now. Kind of leaning on those previous years of experience as a letterer, as an editor, writing for some of these smaller press things, writing short stories for anthologies, contributing writers, things like that. Kind of work your way, building your way up into now being just someone that, being a writer that Todd McFarlane would call out to and bring into the Spawn universe, to
right,
be that level of someone, to be someone that Marvel would go to and basically hand a character like Hollow's Eve, not someone that she created. That version, that character is a clone of another. Spider-Man's history is crazy, but that character became Hollow's Eve. That character became the villain Hollow's Eve, written by Zeb Wells and Ed McGuinness, I think, in Amazing Spider-Man. But she's had a couple spin-off series and solo series and all that stuff. Every time she's appeared, Erica's written her. And that's going to continue. We're going to see some more things anytime she shows up. For the most part, Erica's writing those stories, which, I mean, that's pretty cool. Like you've been assigned that, like anytime Hollow's Eve is in a book, oh, well, Erica Schultz is probably writing that book. Like you've basically been given that character. But yeah, she's written Elektra Daredevil. She's written X-23. She is someone now that you're going to see at Marvel. Which I hope means she goes back to doing some more creator-owned stuff as well. Something like Bylines and Blood, or a book that was really cool called Forgotten Home. She did that with Marika Cresta. It was a Comixology original first, I think, that went, no, I forgot how many issues it went, but eventually got collected in trade at Dark Horse. So she's got some still doing some creator owned stuff that's out there. But I always love to see more of that. But maybe she's got to build her name up some more as a writer at Marvel first. Get some of those reps in there, and then can come back out with something cool, something big again.
Yeah, I mean, I think she's certainly proven herself as a writer.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of, getting the right project, getting the right creative team, getting a publisher that doesn't go bankrupt. Not looking at anyone particular there.
Yeah. No names. But it is interesting. She started in the creator-owned smaller press stuff, and has now moved into more for hire stuff at Marvel. Some bigger profile stuff here and there, and some stuff coming down the line with Marvel throughout the rest of this year so far in 2024. And then obviously working on Rat City, doing in the Spawn universe, over with McFarlane and over at Image. It's cool to see her as a writer move up and level up like that. But then I read something like Bylines and Blood, and it's like, oh right, I also want to see something creator owned by her. Like I'll read her Electra Daredevil. I'll read the Hallow's Eve. She's writing stuff for this Blood Hunters event coming up. She's got a little a Black Widow one shot. Like I'll read all this stuff in Marvel, but I read something in Bylines and Blood like that, and it's like, oh yeah, I want to read something that she created. I want to read more stuff that's from her.
Right? Yeah. If she, it like completely creation of her own mind, not trying to work with someone else's characters or fit in someone else's universe. Which I think that's really
I love
the hard
all that
thing.
stuff. I love all that, but when you read a book like this, it's like I want to see where she takes it.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I was just gonna say, because I love her work and I love Daredevil, but her primary crack at Daredevil was the Daredevil gang war thing, and
which is Elektra Daredevil.
It was Elektra Daredevil, which is fantastic. It's like I could make a strong argument for a few years even of letting Elektra be the Daredevil, and like no caveats, no like, oh, it's like female Daredevil. It's like, no, it's Daredevil. It's Daredevil. And Elektra is Daredevil, not Matt Murdock.
Well, I'll say it is not just like gender swap female. It's specifically Elektra. So it's Elektra's history of being Elektra, also trying now to be Daredevil, is like, which is far more interesting.
It seems like people make a big deal out of that, in many, many ways. But like, what am I thinking? I'm thinking of like a Wally West, Barry Allen type swap, where it's like, both of them were the Flash. Yeah. Like when you were reading them and it switched from Wally West to Barry Allen, you didn't have to say Barry Allen Flash or Wally West Flash. Now you do, because they write them all concurrently.
Well, it's the same thing with Robins,
Yes, right.
Depending on
right.
Your Robin is who when you started reading Batman.
Yes, exactly.
Spider-Man. I mean, because now that Miles and Peter exist together in the same.
Right. Yeah,
there are things like that. Yeah, but I think.
But people seem to get really mad when it happens to coincide with a gender swap.
Yeah. But again, it's specifically Elektra that makes that interesting. It's not just some random other person who got Daredevil's powers and is like that. It's Elektra choosing to put on and be Daredevil, which I think is fascinating. And I'm not a huge Daredevil reader. I've read some of the current stuff a little bit that like Chip Zdarsky and Marco Cacchetto did. I've just started to look into the current run now, which is Saladin Ahmed and Aaron Kuder. But I read this gang war thing because I read Spider-Man. So I read all the tie-ins there. I read all the tie-ins there. So reading Elektra, Erica Schultz's take on Elektra as Daredevil, and especially the inner monologue stuff, the stuff that Elektra's dealing with.
And her commentary on the Spider-Man, I thought was hilarious.
It's like fantastic. Yeah. But yeah, it's fun to see that, to let her play in those worlds and give her takes on those characters. But you're right, I'm with you too. It's just I want to see more stuff created whole cloth by her with another creator, two of them, or in this case, three of them, sitting down, brainstorming ideas, creating a world, creating characters of their own. that's something I want to see more of, definitely.
Yeah. So I think yeah, between that and by all means, go look at Erica's Wikipedia article because
Yeah.
that's literally where she'll point you herself. Um, but I guess we should say Eisner winner for short story in Moon Knight.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
But that I always get those Marvel the Black, White,
That
and
one
Blood,
is
or
Black, White, and Blood, I think.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
they're all variations of Black, White, and Red.
Black, White, and yeah, for the most part. Yeah, yeah. But
And
yeah.
hers is a particularly cool. I mean, you can read it. I was going to say one sitting. That's absurd to say. It's like 10, 12 pages.
Yeah, it's a short story.
You
Yes.
can read it standing up.
Yeah.
But really, really fun. Like, we intend to talk to her, a little bit about that just because you can't help the bait of like, wow, you won an Oscar for this. So let's chat about it a little
And
bit.
Eisner.
Eisner.
Yeah. Well,
What did I say? Oscar. It's
said,
because I
but-
think of it as a little short film.
but
I do.
it is I mean, the Eisners are the Oscars because the Oscars are the Academy, right? Motion Picture Academy, people who make films.
Right.
The Eisners are people who are in the industry. You're a creative, you're a retailer, you're a public, you're a journalist or whatever it is. So it's people who make comics giving awards to people who make comics. So yeah, it is. Then
And
there
all
are other.
the Eisner winners we've talked to about their Eisner wins tend to be grateful but downplayed a little bit because I think they know. Just like a good Oscar winner knows, like,
how do you award art?
I wasn't necessarily the best thing this year, but I'm very grateful to win. Because someone in the industry sees things that the Academy doesn't see or the fan doesn't see. So case in point, no Greta Gerwig nomination for director last year. It's like, what in the Green Book is happening this year?
No, but yes, so there and stuff like that does happen with the Eisners. There's always some weird category fraud stuff with the Eisners as well as any award show that's meant to
rank
honor
art.
Rank art. Yeah, exactly. So I personally pay less attention to the winners. Anytime the Eisner nominations come out, like what was nominated tends to be like, this is some pretty good stuff here. And some of it can be very esoteric, very like, you're nominating the foreign film that played in 15 theaters, but every critic loved, but like no one's. A lot of that happens too. But also, then you get a Moon Knight anthology. Like the person who writes Batman gets nominated for best writer because it's Batman plus like two other books. So you play the hits as well. But yes, the Moon Knight Black, White, and Blood story. Yeah, Black, White, and Blood. That story is real fun. Is real cool. And most of those anthologies that Marvel and DC put out, a lot of times there's some cool hidden gems. Maybe they're not all winners. Some of the, depending on, but some of them are that. Some of those anthologies have some really, really cool short stories. And a lot of them, this doesn't apply to someone like Erica, but a lot of them are like, they'll give like brand new up and comers. Like here's 8 pages to tell a Harley Quinn story or something like that, that maybe someone who's on the rise, who's only done a couple of things in the industry. It's a way for them to showcase some younger talent, some newer talent, or give some more established people a place to flex and have some fun. So,
yeah, and I will say in defense of, so I slept on Moon Knight, Black, White, and Blood, and all of those other things because I feel the way about those that I do about annuals, where it's like, I've already got so much money tied up in books. They're typically they're not non-canon, but they're like non-sequential with.
They're not in continuity.
Yes, not in continuity. Right. Yeah. They're not in continuity, so it's like a break from continuity. They're usually like little short stories and vignettes. Sometimes they're fun, sometimes they're kind of disposable. So I kind of like stopped pulling things like that. And then the last few shows I've gone to, I'm like, oh, you know what would have been a really great little like passport to take around to 5 different creators here is that annual or like that Black, White, because it's got like 30 creators in it. And it's like, that's like a cool way to have like an excuse to go talk to a bunch of creators without lugging a whole briefcase around like Alex and I do. It's like you could take one book in and really go nuts.
Yeah,
at a
yeah,
small
yeah.
Comic-Con. So
No, and like I said, that they're not every story is a winner. Some of them your mileage may vary, but yeah, it's a short story, so you get through it quickly. Um, they're fun, and you can get some really cool stuff out of them. So I would suggest people not skip those if it's a character that you like. I mean, if you don't like if Moon Knight's not a character that you ever care about to read, you probably don't got to read that one. But there is they've done an Electra one like that. I think they've done Wolverine like that. They've done Darth Vader like that over the Star Wars line. There's Batman Brave and the Bold, over at DC. Harley Quinn, I mentioned, has done that. So they have them for a bunch of different characters, the popular ones. So if it's a character that you like, even if you don't know who the creatives are, because you're right, you're going to see like a dozen names, and, even if you don't know who the creators are, like pick it up and read the stories and find out who they are afterwards. Because one of those stories might be something pretty cool that you've never seen or read before for that kind of character. So they're
yeah,
always
and
worth
by
picking
all
up.
means, like I know it's the days are gone, but what actually turned me around on those type of things were the Vertigo ones. Uh,
Mhm.
Specifically, I think you found them for me, the Vertigo CMYK
The CMYKs,
quarterly.
yeah, the quarterlies,
Um,
yeah.
it's holy murderer's row of
Mhm.
creators. It's
Yeah.
just like,
But that
it's
was before a lot of them were like big name
I
creators. A
know,
lot
yeah.
they were up and comers back then.
Well, and I have like the Vertigo Time Warp, which was
Mhm.
I had Jay Lee sign that at the last con, and he was like, oh, I've never even seen this book before. They said they asked him to make a cover that was sci-fi, and
Yeah,
that
that's
was
right. That's
all he
right.
had to work
That's
with.
right. He did the variant
He
cover
did
for
the
that.
variant
Yeah.
cover, and he
And
was
that
like,
book's over 10 years
okay,
old now, I think.
I know, but my
Yeah.
goodness gracious, the names in that book.
Well, yeah,
Um,
yeah. It
So
was
that's like one of those where I'm like, oh, that's kind of a fun MacGuffin quest for me now is to say like, I'm gonna get every signature on this book that's worth nothing. Like, no, it's because a completely overlooked book.
good
But
luck getting Damon Lindelof on that one.
yeah, I think if I saw Jeff Lemire, I'd have equal chance of seeing Damon. Yeah, which is to say, I'm not going to see either of them.
Oh no, if you're willing to go, if you're willing to travel a little, you can get Lemire. You can get Lemire. I've gotten Lemire before, so I mean, it's
All
not
right.
you don't have like I got Lemire. I went to Toronto where he lives and didn't get Lemire there, so I got him elsewhere. So
Okay.
it's possible. It's possible to get Lemire. And you'll do what I did, which was like when I saw him at a show and be like, I'm a huge fan, but I've never seen a show before. So I'm going to apologize for putting 12 things down here, like 14 things down here, including like one, two, three, like four hardcovers or whatnot. And
Oh
like,
my gosh. Yeah. I mean,
I
I'm like,
plus
and
all the issues there.
I've
And
already
then
got it.
because he's Canadian, he apologized to me for not being at more shows. I was
Yes.
like, wait,
Classic.
that's not how this works. I'm apologizing because I'm a dozen things here, which I bought, which so you got
It'd
money
only
out
be
of it.
more
But
Canadian if he also handed you a Tim Hortons donut with
yeah,
his apology. But
that'd be good though. That'd be
um,
good.
yeah.
Anyway, we should probably move on. Jeff Lemire didn't write this book.
Van
Uh,
Jensen. Yeah.
Van Jensen. So Van Jensen's got a really cool history here. And this plays specifically into Bylines and Blood, is that before he worked, I think, full time as a writer, writing prose and writing comics, he was a newspaper columnist. He was a crime reporter, investigative reporter. He has a history doing that. So I have no doubt that the parts of Bylines and Blood, Satya's past there as a journalist, as an investigative reporter, specifically a crime journalist, I'm sure that comes from Van's experience. Some of those things, I would guess, a lot of those pieces, some of those things are lifted like one to one from his own experience,
Right.
especially the idea of struggling to uncover the truth for a medium that's dying, specifically being print journalism, daily newspapers, things like that. So he has that background before moving into writing more fiction, writing prose and things like that. And a lot of his work, the bulk of his work, like the chunk of it, really came over at DC, specifically in the what I call the New 52 era, which is between 2011 and 2016. Most notably, longer runs on Flash at that time and Green Lantern. written some Superman, some Wonder Woman, some one shots and other issues there. But mostly Flash, Green Lantern. That's where you're going to see his name again. It's going to have the New 52 labeling on it. So it's been a little while since he's written a lot of um, for hire mainstream stuff like that. He does have more stuff over in the indie realm, over at Dark Horse. Cryptocracy. I never said that name right. Cryptocracy with artist Pete Woods is over at Dark Horse. It's kind of a fantasy thriller conspiracy theory book. About the shadowy people that actually run the world. And he's got a book right now. It may be finished. I think the trade's coming out. It's called Tear Us Apart, which he co-wrote with Jay Baruchel, the actor,
Okay.
who people know from he's part of the Judd Apatow troupe of people. It's a kind of a horror-ish tinged, like teenage-ish romance about kids in a cult raised in the Canadian wilderness to be assassins, who like try to escape the cult. But that's out now, and or the single is out now. I think the trade is coming out or is about to come out for that. But that's called Terrace Part. That's also from Dark Horse. The thing that I have from Van Jensen that I didn't know I had was that he adapted Casino Royale and Live and Let Die for Dynamite, as in specifically adapted the Ian Fleming novels, the
Right.
James
So
Bond novels.
the OGN ones,
Yes.
not the
Yeah.
single
So
issue. Okay.
yeah, they're Dynamite has the James Bond franchise, has that license, and they've created their own canon and timeline with James Bond that's been going on for almost 10 years now, calling up on 10 years when they started that in like 2014, 2015, something like that. But that's great. It's a lot of fun. But they also were in the process of directly adapting Ian Fleming's novels in order. And they've only got through two of them. I don't know if they're going to do more. But I didn't know, but I have both them, Casino Royale and then Live and Let Die. It's got the art on those. They have this kind of a throwbackish feel, kind of a retro feel. It's got kind of a Sean and Jacob Phillips kind of watercolor sketchiness. They're great stuff. They're great adaptations. But I didn't know that Van had been the person to
I had
to
no
make
idea
this and write
either,
this.
and
Yeah, I had no idea.
very curious to me because I've always been hesitant to pick those up despite being like I'm a bigger Bond fan than I even care to admit. I think to put it mildly, like I've read almost all the Ian Fleming books. I've certainly read all the Anthony Horowitz like new Bond books, and I got my start in comics reading the Dynamite like
Yeah.
new Bond comics.
Mhm.
And I certainly love like Daniel Craig and all that stuff. But having read like the book Casino Royale, I was not excited by a graphic novel adaptation because his writing is kind of dry.
Yeah. Well, I personally, the number of novel adaptations that I've read the number of comic adaptations I've read of novels, got that backwards,
Right.
is pretty low. I read these specifically because they were James Bond. I was interested in them because of that, you know? But for the most part, I mean, I guess I have the Dune ones because I'm interested in seeing how they were adapting that the comics. They're doing the first Dune book is in 3 parts. The first 2 are out. Just seeing how they do the visuals directly from Herbert's descriptions. But I only picked these up. I only picked Casino Royale up because it was James Bond, not because I'm a big fan of comic adaptations of novels. And again, I didn't know Van Jensen's name at the time. But they're good adaptations. They're cool. And again, because they're obviously more faithful to the novels than whatever they did in the books. In the movies for both Live and Let Die and Casino Royale. They're cool reads. And I if you're a Bond fan, especially if you've read the Ian Fleming novels, I've actually only ever read Casino Royale in terms of having read Ian Fleming's books.
I don't know if I would have gone much further if I started with that one either.
Well, because it's the first one, so I was like, I'm going to read them all in order. And I read that one. I was like, maybe I don't need to read the
Yeah.
James Bond books. Maybe I don't need to read
That is where I got with them eventually. I was like,
yeah, it's like maybe I don't
I'll
need to
switch
read
to
these.
audio. And I was like listening to them going on walks, and I was like, I didn't think I could fall asleep walking. But if if that were going to happen, these books would be the ones
And I
to
think
do it.
we had them growing. I think at one point, maybe my brother had gotten them all and had read them, and he might still have them. And I said, I read Casino Royale because I was like, I'm gonna read all the James Bond books because my dad loves Bond. It passed down through. I think we talked about this when we talked about Velvet. Love James Bond. But yeah, I read that first book. I was like, yeah, maybe I don't need to read the novels. But I was interested to pick up Casino Royale, the adaptation, and I enjoyed that. So I enjoyed it enough to when they announced and then released Live and Let Die, I picked that one up too. So that's kind of cool to see for someone like a writer like Van Jensen. So, he has time as a journalist. He has time writing for hire characters, Flash, Green Lantern, things like that. Has his own creative stuff, his own creator own work, and then also adapting existing material. Which that's something that's got to be very difficult. Like moving from prose into sequential art storytelling. Knowing
Right.
Because you're making that call now of when are you taking the words out and letting the art speak for itself, and also I gotta imagine, even though the movies are so different, knowing that movies exist to these, and maybe not falling prey to be like, well, a passage like this was done this way in the movie, that sort of thing.
I mean, even the artists, it's like, if you make him look slightly more like Roger Moore than Sean Connery, some people are just going to be pissed. It's like,
if you
Connery isn't the definitive Bond. He was just first.
You draw this setting to look like a scene that's or looks close to a scene in the movie, and then it's like, well, now are you just aping the movie, or is that just how it's that sort of thing? There's a line. There's a line you got to toe there. But the last thing I'll say about Van Jensen is, and this is, I think, is fascinating. In 2016, he was named a comic book ambassador by the U.S. State Department. Which is,
I don't even know what that means. It sounds like a Big Block of Cheese Day West Wing episode.
It kind of does, but he literally traveled the world with the State Department to specifically to like areas of refugee camps and things like that, and just spoke and talked to especially children about telling stories through comics.
All right, I'm going to update my LinkedIn profile and say that's the job I'm now looking for.
Which is fascinating. So I
was without a life goal until today.
I know. You're thinking that what a cool way to go and be official ambassador, to go out there and just the idea of spreading, or just the idea of spreading the idea of storytelling, any storytelling, through comics, through sequential art. And that's what he did. He was doing that under the I guess for starting in 2016. So that's that was right at the end of the Obama administration there. But that's what a cool job that could be, to spend a little time traveling the world.
I'm already sold. Yeah, you kind of said like, one, it exists. This role. Yeah. Two, you travel the world doing it.
It did exist.
Right.
Yeah.
And I would love to know who Joe Biden's comic ambassador is. It's probably somebody who did like Jughead in the 40s.
It's probably one of those positions that isn't fulfilled every year. I'm guessing it's not like, Senate confirmable, you just get appointed to it, but it's probably not one that is filled every year. So there's a good chance that it's open right now. That new life goal for you. New life goal to be appointed comic book ambassador by the U.S. State Department.
Yeah, I mean, I hope everyone listening knows that I'm in no way kidding. That, like, I would rearrange my life for that role.
Oh, I'd do it in a heartbeat.
And this would be the Comic Ambassadors Podcast. Bam.
Yes.
That would get us. We would have a booth at San Diego for
Yeah,
the Storied Arcs
that'd be
podcast.
that it's a new life. One of us has to get that role now. One of us
Yeah.
has to get that job.
Well, and then with the other one, yeah, whoever doesn't get it will appoint their successor, and it will be the other one of us. And
Well, no. Listen, I think we're
you're going to be
both.
more magnanimous with your
No.
power.
I think both of us are magnanimous enough to be the other's deputy. You know,
Okay.
be the will be the deputy ambassador. One of us gets to be Sam, one of us gets to be Toby, and that's fine.
Yeah. Now I'm only thinking of like the Lin-Manuel backstage thing from
The Tonys.
the Tonys.
Yeah.
Yeah, where he was
I guess
arguing with.
I could have said Leo and Josh too, but
Yeah, no, he was arguing
yeah,
with Tommy Kail over which one
yeah,
of them was
yeah.
which one was Sam and which one was Toby.
Still, yeah.
Um,
But that'd be our dual roles. We'd be comic book ambassadors. That'd be great. So yeah, that's just a dope job, a dope position that Van Jensen got put in, which I think shows, kind of the breadth of what he's done and what he's worked on. Like I said, he hasn't done a whole lot of for hire work since about 2016. So it's not like he's been working on a lot of DC stuff like in the Rebirth era, things like that. But it's mostly been creator own work stuff at Dark Horse and obviously again a place like Aftershock doing bylines and blood. So it'd be his comic work is slowed down some. Maybe it's because he doesn't need to write as much now or being as focused maybe on other things. But his work is still out there. If you're a fan of the Flash or Green Lantern or anything like that, you've probably read his stuff during the New 52. So
yeah. Okay. Do we need to get to
Aneke,
anything
yeah,
else
the
on
artist.
Van or just
No,
Aneke?
I think we've covered our writers here. We
Well, and
can
I
go
guess
to,
we could also say that we will not be doing a deep dive on Cardinal Ray because
yes,
we've discussed Cardinal's work
yeah, as letterer,
several
yeah,
times.
yeah. Specifically, Eat the Rich and Know Your Station. So you can scroll back through to the 0 episode we did on that for Cardinal Ray as a letterer there. But Aneke is our artist here. She's a Spanish artist. Not a ton of work. This is maybe some of the more higher profile stuff that she's done. Well, no, that's not true. That's not true. Her highest profile stuff would have been working at DC, specifically on the Bombshells and Gotham City Garage lines. And now both of those are like alt universe storytelling. They were digital chapters first before eventually appearing in print.
But the Bombshell stuff is really, no pun intended, blown up.
Oh yeah, because the character design that they do for that, and those covers were done, and I think like Gotham City Garage, the covers were done by Aunt Lucia, but the Bombshell lines and those character designs, which were turned into statues and maquettes and things like that, the artist Aunt Lucia, maybe it's Lucia. I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name. But that style, that like retro 40s style kind of stuff there, that reimagining of the DC characters, super, super popular. So Aneke worked on those.
It's the same reason I'll buy any Michael Cho variant.
Yeah. Well, but yeah, it's retro, but it's alt universe stuff for
Right.
the Bombshell lines too. So, very cool stuff. She's done some other spot work like on Catwoman, maybe some Batgirls, Wonder Woman, things like that. She's done some work there. Also done work at Dynamite, like Red Sonja, things like that. So she's drawn a lot of female characters. That's kind of what she has been doing. One thing that I saw that I hadn't seen before, but she did an OGN adaptation of Carmen, which I guess in some level makes sense being a Spanish artist, with Alex Schroeder and P. Craig Russell, which I've seen some interior pages for, like you find previews and things like that. Looks gorgeous, looks incredible. I guess if I cared about the story of Carmen, maybe I'd pick that up and read it. But just from what I've seen, the interior art there, I think she's sharing artwork, her and Craig P. Russell. It looks great. It looks fantastic. And I believe she did the cover on it too. So maybe something to check out. The comic adaptation of an opera, not a genre that I'm really familiar with that I've seen a lot of. We're just talking about the comic adaptation of novels, but maybe of opera and of stage plays is the another way to go. So I might check that out just to see more of her artwork because I do like her style. I think there's a there's a cleanliness to her style and to her lines. That I think is really cool. And she does color herself as well. So there's especially in Bylines and Blood, there's a lot of bright pops of color because it is set in kind of this neo-noir dystopian future kind of world that's kind of dark and all that. So there's some really cool and very smart, bright pops of power, pops of color that aren't they're not quite neon. I mean, say they're not neonish in some cases.
I mean,
they're
like
just
the first
they're
page
real
is like
primary.
fluorescent blue.
Yeah, they're real primary. Big yellows, some big blues,
Well,
things like that.
and yes, like, but the yellow, like the way that it's used is clearly summoning like Dick Tracy energy,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
is like sprinkled into the book at about the same ratio as like actual Dick Tracy isms. And I
that is
think
true.
it's a
Yeah,
brilliant visual depiction of what's going
yeah,
on in the text and the script.
yeah.
It's like, um, yeah, Dick Tracy is kind of the noir detective,
He's kind of
par excellence.
yeah. He is kind of the default example, right? At this
Yeah, I mean,
point,
I
yeah,
think he's kind of fallen out of the spotlight for the last 20 years or so, but I think
yeah.
you and I are old enough to remember when Dick Tracy references were more common, and I think
Mhm.
some comic publisher just got Dick Tracy rights sorted out
Oh no,
recently.
it's yeah. I mean, a year or so ago, there was a Dick Tracy little miniseries that was it written and drawn by Michael Oeming? Um, but there is a new Dick Tracy, at least a new number one coming out in this summer. It's just been solicited. So
It's Mad
uh,
Cave. Mad Cave has it,
yeah, yeah.
which was a
It's little
big
by
get for
little.
them.
It's little by little. It's one of those things that kind of tries for some resurgence and doesn't get a foothold and then kind of goes away. Um,
I mean,
but yeah,
the oh my goodness. Okay, so it's just like, if you like this book, do yourself a favor and go Google Dick Tracy, because uh it looks like, I mean, it says available April 24th on their website.
oh, is it coming out now? Maybe I
So
read the date wrong. Okay.
yeah, it's, well, but that's according to the Mad Cave website, and sometimes these publisher websites get outdated because they make it once and then things change. The Diamond Code has a February in it. Anyway,
Well,
uh
yeah.
the art looks very Mad Cave, but it looks very cool. And it looks like they've made him a bigger, bulkier guy. So he might be a little bit more of a bruiser than I remember Dick Tracy being. So anyway, all that to say,
Oh,
uh,
Alex Seguera's co-writing that. That's good stuff.
yes, no, I think
Uh,
they got an interesting team,
yeah.
and it should be an interesting book.
Yeah,
Um,
that is true. Yeah. Um, I guess
so if you like that, read this. If you like this, read that.
yeah.
Uh, and if the Dick Tracy ends up being worth reading, I think you and I might have a real fun time picking that up a year from now, assuming it's a limited series, not an ongoing thing.
Yeah,
Um,
they've got three. It looks like there are three issues solicited right now. So it's at least ongoing for the moment. Trying to see if I can. Don't know. I can't tell. It's hard to tell with someone like Mad Cave. Is it a mini series? Is it an ongoing? Is it 4 issues for now? And then they decide, no, wait, it's going to go 6 now, and no, it's going to go 12. Who knows? But that is something that may be worth picking up because you know it's always interesting to see what they do with a character like Dick Tracy. Do you update it? Do you put it in a modern time? Is it back in the original time period, the original universe with modern sensibilities, kind of thing? I
right.
think about a few years back, if many years back now at this point, Darwin Cook reimagined the spirit with the same. It was the idea of it's in the same setting, in the same world as Spirit always had, but with a few modern sensibilities, a few modern um, attitudes, things like that. So it wasn't like he didn't move the spirit into modern times. It was the same Will Eisner spirit, just with some current day thinking and a little current day technology. So I think with Dick Tracy, it falls into something very similar, where you could, it's right for something like that. You still keep it in the time period that it was originally in, but you can throw in a little more modern day
social commentary. Yeah.
commentary,
Like I think of
attitudes,
The
things
Good
like that.
Asian
Yeah.
being kind of like that, where it's like,
Yeah.
uh,
Well,
it's set back then. It's from someone back then, but it's talking about things that weren't talked about back then.
yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's addressing things that weren't, they weren't issues back then. But yeah, no, I think Dick Tracy is. I mean, I know, and I think if you've read Dick Tracy or The Spirit, like those are influences on the character of Sacha in Bylines and Blood, in terms of that kind of level of private investigator slash in vigilante slash sort of thing, do-gooder kind of thing. Those are kind of the genre. Those are among the genres that are mixed into this story.
Yeah. So I, I think Aneke's work speaks for itself. Like, based on this book, any time from now on, I see Aneke as a series artist or even a cover artist, it's gonna have my attention.
I think it's definitely something worth picking up without question. Yeah. I think her style is really clean, and I like her character design. I like her character work a lot as well.
Well, and some of the paneling, which we'll get into next week, but
the
there's
storytelling
very
is great.
interesting.
The storytelling is great.
Sequential choices,
Mm-hmm.
which that's always kind of like, I've got a couple tests for like when I see an artist for the first time. One of them is like, how's their line work? Like, are people's shapes and looks consistent from panel to panel, page to page? But then there's also like, are they capturing sequential things, or are you seeing basically the same face 9 times in a row, and only from context and dialogue are you picking up? And then there are the little bonus things of like, oh, are you stuck in a 9 or 12 or whatever panel grid, or a three panel thing, or are you getting creative and mixing it up? And then the next level is, are you finding interesting ways to tell the story with the paneling itself? And I go back to this a lot, but David Aha and the Seeds was there were like implied panels, like things like that, where it's just like next level.
There's
stuff.
That's like next level stuff there. But yeah, no, I'm with you. Again, she doesn't have the longest resume right now in terms of what she's worked on. And again, the stuff like with Bombshells and Gotham City Garage, a lot of those books are, I don't want to sound like I'm denigrating them, but they were less on the storytelling, like getting creative with panel and things like that. That's more on design and look and style,
right?
Which is very, very cool. And you read those books because you like the character design, because you like the vibe, and she can deliver that as an artist. But I think Bylines and Blood does show what she can do as a storyteller as well. And I said, I do love her character design. I love the way she draws characters and the way she uses color and things like that. But you are right. There are some storytelling choices, some paneling choices that show that it's not just like, I can draw good, you got to be able to tell a story too. And, and she shows she can do that here in Bylines and Blood. And I'm excited to hopefully see more for her. So yeah, if I see her name on something, I'm definitely going to pick it up. I'm going to flip through it and see what it is, because I'm interested to see what she has next and how she can further apply her skills.
For sure. Anything else to say about this series before we dive into the spoiler-filled discussion followed by the interview the week after?
I don't think so. I don't think I think it'll be hit or miss, honestly, on where you can find it physically. Your shop either will have all 4 issues or probably none of them. But it is available digitally. You can get it from your library, from
any trade,
Hoopla or Libby,
and any shop can order the trade.
Barnes you should be able to get it. Yeah, it should be available in bookstores. It'll be available to get.
I did have someone ask me that though, because I was talking to someone about this book, And they said, well, with Aftershock being in bankruptcy, it doesn't make it hard to find a trade. I said, no. Like, I don't know if it's Diamond or whoever, but they have warehouses with stuff.
Listen, it may or may not be able to be reordered. Well, Aftershock books may or may not be able to be reordered depending on what the inventory has. Like they're not printing new ones, but it's something that may or may not be able to be ordered. But you should be able to find it in most places that sell at least the trade. You'll be able to find the collection. If you're staunchly single issue, little hit or miss on what you can find there, or you can find someone like Eric at a convention and do what I did and buy directly from her, which I was happy to do, because then I know I'm doing as much as I can to support the artist directly.
All right, and with all of that, we will thank you for listening. We'll ask you to like and share our podcast, follow us on social media, all available in our link tree in our episode description and on our website, storiedarcs.com. And grab a trade, and we'll see you next week.
Peace.